The Afghan sun hadn't yet broken over the Hindu Kush mountains, but the flight line at Bagram Airfield was already alive with the roar of jet engines and the sharp smell of aviation fuel. Captain Maya Rodriguez walked across the tarmac with her helmet bag slung over her shoulder, her flight suit still crisp and new, the Velcro name tape reading RODRIGUEZ in bold black letters. This was it, her first combat deployment as an A-10 Thunderbolt II pilot, the moment she'd been training for since she was a little girl watching fighter jets streak across the sky. But something felt different this morning, wrong almost. Her commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel Harris, stood beside an A-10 Warthog at the far end of the line, arms crossed, wearing an expression Maya couldn't quite read. As she approached, she noticed the other pilots and crew chiefs had stopped their pre-flight checks to watch her. The attention made her skin prickle with unease. "Morning, Captain," Harris said, his voice carrying a strange weight. "I want to introduce you to your aircraft." Maya's eyes traveled over the battle-scarred machine before her. The A-10 was an ugly beast by any standard, a flying tank with wings bolted on as an afterthought. But to Maya, it was beautiful. The twin engines, the massive GAU-8 Avenger cannon protruding from the nose like an accusing finger, the titanium bathtub surrounding the cockpit, every inch of it designed for one purpose: to protect troops on the ground and come home no matter what the enemy threw at it. Then she saw the tail number, 810967. The digits seemed to burn themselves into her retinas. Maya's breath caught in her throat. Her hands, normally steady as stone, began to tremble. Those numbers, she'd seen them before, in nightmares, in fragmented childhood memories she'd spent 20 years trying to forget. "Sir," her voice came out smaller than she intended, "this tail number, why does it?" "Special bird for a special pilot," Harris interrupted, but his eyes betrayed something deeper. Sadness? Pride? Maya couldn't tell. "Your father flew this aircraft, Captain Rodriguez, 21 years ago in Desert Storm." The world seemed to tilt sideways. Maya had been 8 years old when 2 Air Force officers appeared at their front door in San Antonio, their faces grave, their words careful and rehearsed. "Your father was a hero," they'd told her mother. "Major Carlos Rodriguez gave his life for his country." But they never explained how, never told her which aircraft he'd flown, what mission he'd been on, why a healthy fighter pilot in his prime had died 6 months after returning from Iraq. Her mother had packed away every photograph, every flight suit, every reminder of the man who'd taught Maya to love the sky. "It's too painful," she'd said. "We need to move forward." So Maya had grown up with a ghost, a father she barely remembered, whose legacy loomed over her like a thundercloud. And now here she stood, 20 years later, staring at the very machine he'd flown into war. "This aircraft was retired after your father's death," Harris continued, walking slowly around the Warthog's nose. "Kept in storage at Davis-Monthan for 2 decades. When we learned you were deploying to the 74th Fighter Squadron, some people who knew your father, thought it was time to bring her back to life." Maya's mind raced. She'd fought so hard to earn her wings, to prove she belonged in the cockpit not because of her name but because of her skill. Every instructor, every evaluation, every challenge had been shadowed by whispers. "She's only here because her father died." Now they were giving her his aircraft. The weight of expectation threatened to crush her. "Permission to speak freely, sir." Maya's voice had found its edge again. "Granted. I didn't ask for this. I don't want special treatment. I just want to fly combat missions like every other pilot in this squadron." Harris stepped closer, his weathered face softening. "Captain, this isn't special treatment. This is a responsibility. Your father was one of the finest pilots I ever knew. He saved lives. He inspired an entire generation of aviators. That tail number means something to a lot of people in this Air Force." He paused, letting his words sink in. "The question is, what does it mean to you?" Maya looked back at the aircraft. Someone had stenciled her father's name beneath the cockpit rail in faded letters. MAJ. CARLOS Havoc, Rodriguez. She'd never known his call sign, Havoc. It suited the stories she'd heard whispered at Air Force gatherings. The pilot who'd fly through hell itself to protect his wingmen, who'd taken hits that would have downed any other aircraft and still brought his troops home. Could she live up to that? Did she even want to try? A crew chief approached with her pre-flight checklist, breaking the tension. "Ma'am, she's fueled and armed. Ready when you are." Maya took the clipboard with steady hands, her decision crystallizing. She couldn't change the past, couldn't bring back the father she'd lost or escape the shadow of his legend. But she could honor it. She could climb into that cockpit and prove that the name Rodriguez still meant something in the skis over Afghanistan. "Thank you, sir," she said to Harris, her voice firm now. "I'll take good care of her." As she climbed the ladder into the cockpit, Maya noticed something scratched into the metal frame near the seat, barely visible, worn by time. For Maya, fly fierce, Mija. Dad. Her father had left her a message 21 years ago, and she was only now receiving it. Maya strapped in, her hands moving through the startup checklist with practiced precision. The engines roared to life, and the Warthog seemed to wake from a long sleep. Through the canopy, she could see the sun finally cresting the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. She didn't know it yet, but tail number 810967 was about to fly into history once more. And this time, a Rodriguez would bring it home. Maya had been in country for exactly 72 hours when the call came. She was in the squadron-ready room, studying maps of the Helmand province with her wingman, Captain Rick "Shark" Morrison, a veteran A-10 pilot with 3 combat deployments, and a scar running down his left cheek from a close encounter with shrapnel. Shark had been assigned to mentor her through her first weeks in the combat zone, and so far, he'd treated her with the cautious professionalism reserved for untested pilots. The loudspeaker crackled to life. Broken arrow, troops in contact, Sangin Valley. All available CAS assets scramble immediately. Broken arrow. The words every ground soldier dreaded and every pilot lived to answer. Friendly forces surrounded, in danger of being overrun, calling for immediate air support. Maya's training kicked in before her conscious mind could catch up. She was running toward the flight line, Shark beside her, their boots pounding against the concrete. "You ready for this, Rodriguez?" Shark shouted over the sirens. "Born ready," Maya shot back, though her heart hammered against her ribs. 4 minutes later, she was strapped into tail number 810967, engines screaming to life. The tower gave them immediate clearance. No time for standard procedures, no time for second thoughts. Just throttles forward and wheels up, climbing hard into the crystalline Afghan sky. The mission brief came over the radio as they flew. A Marine patrol had walked into an ambush in a narrow valley. 35 Marines pinned down by an estimated 100 Taliban fighters positioned in caves and compounds on the surrounding ridgelines. Helicopter extraction, impossible under heavy fire. The Marines had been fighting for 40 minutes and were down to their last magazines. "Hawkeye 21 and 22, this is Badger 6, the radio crackled with a young voice trying desperately to sound calm. "We are taking fire from multiple positions. We have 4 wounded, limited ammo, and no cover. How far out are you?" Maya checked her navigation display. "Badger 6, Hawkeye 21 is 12 minutes out. Hang tight, Marines. The cavalry is coming." 12 minutes might be 11 too many, the Marine replied, and Maya could hear gunfire crackling in the background. Shark pulled alongside her Warthog, close enough that she could see his face through the canopy. He gave her a thumbs up, then pointed down and forward, a silent message, "Follow my lead." Maya nodded. She was the new pilot, the untested one. This was Shark's show. But as the Sangin Valley appeared ahead, carved between jagged mountains like a wound in the earth, Maya felt something shift inside her. The nervousness evaporated. Her breathing steadied. Her hands on the stick became extensions of her will. She trained for this moment 10,000 times in simulators, in training ranges, in her dreams. The aircraft around her, tail number 810967, seemed to hum with purpose. "Tally target area," Shark called. "I've got multiple heat signatures on the northern ridge. Maya, you take the southern compounds. We'll work in from the flanks and collapse their position." "Negative," Maya heard herself say. "Say again." "Negative, Shark. Look at the geometry. The Marines are in a dried riverbed with zero cover. If we work the flanks, we'll push the Taliban right down their throats. We need to hit the center mass first, force them to scatter, then hunt the runners." 3 seconds of radio silence. Shark was the experienced one, the teacher. Maya had just contradicted him on her first combat mission. She held her breath. "Damn, Rodriguez, you're right. Okay, we go center mass. I'll hit the cave positions. You take the compound cluster at grid Papa Tango 47. Maya's targeting computer locked onto the compound, a collection of mud brick buildings 600 meters from the surrounded Marines. Her infrared display showed 20-plus heat signatures moving between the structures, muzzle flashes flickering like deadly fireflies. "Badger 6, Hawkeye 2-1, danger close air support inbound. Mark your position with smoke." "Roger, smoke out." A green smoke grenade billowed up from the riverbed. The Marines were closer to the enemy than Maya had thought, barely 200 meters. This wasn't just danger close. This was insanity close. "Shark, I'm going hot." "Cleared hot, give him hell." Maya rolled her Warthog inverted and pulled the nose down through the horizon, diving at a 60-degree angle toward the compound. The Earth rushed up to meet her. Tracer rounds began floating past her canopy, the Taliban shooting back, trying to knock her from the sky. The A-10's armored cockpit pinged with small arms fire, but the titanium bathtub held. At 8,000 feet, Maya triggered her GAU-8 Avenger cannon. The sound was apocalyptic, a roar that seemed to tear the sky apart. The 30 cannon fired 70 rounds per second, each depleted uranium shell the size of a Coke bottle, traveling at nearly 3,500 feet per second. The compound below disappeared in a churning cloud of dust, pulverized mud brick, and shrapnel. Maya's entire aircraft shuddered from the recoil as she held the trigger down for a 3-second burst, 210 rounds of pure destruction. She pulled up hard at 2,000 feet, banking left to assess damage. Where the compound had stood, there was now only rubble and smoke. The heat signatures were gone. Yeah, good hits," Badger 6 screamed over the radio. "You just erased their whole mortar position." But Maya was already rolling in for another pass. Her targeting computer had identified the cave positions on the northern ridge, harder targets, requiring precision. Shark was making his run, his cannon fire stitching across the mountainside, but there were too many positions, too many fighters. 2-1 is in from the south, Maya called, lining up her shot. This time she selected a Maverick missile, guiding it with her targeting pod toward a cave entrance where she could see the backblast signature of an RPG launcher. The missile screamed off her wing, covering the distance in seconds, and detonated directly inside the cave mouth. Secondary explosions followed. The Taliban had been storing ammunition inside. For the next 20 minutes, Maya and Shark worked the valley like surgeons, making pass after pass, their cannons singing death, their missiles finding targets with surgical precision. Maya lost count of how many runs she made. 6, 8. Her aircraft took hits. She could feel the impacts, see the warning lights, but the Warthog kept flying, kept fighting, just like it was designed to do. Finally, Badger 6's voice came back, calmer now. "Hawkeye flight, cease fire, cease fire. Targets are destroyed or retreating. You beautiful bastards just saved 35 lives." Maya pulled up to altitude, her hands shaking now with adrenaline dump. She'd done it. Her first combat mission, and she'd brought everyone home. "Hawkeye 2-2 to 2-1, Shark's voice came over the radio, serious now. "That was the finest flying I've seen in 3 deployments. Where the hell did you learn to shoot like that? Maya looked down at her father's name stenciled below the canopy rail. I honestly don't know, she whispered. But that night back at Bagram, Shark pulled her aside in the debriefing room after the others had left. His eyes were haunted. Maya, I need to tell you something, he said quietly. I flew with your father, just once in 2003 before he died, training exercise in Nevada. He paused, struggling with the words. You fly exactly like him. Same instinct, same aggression, same precision. It's like watching a ghost. Maya's blood ran cold. My father died in 1991, Desert Storm. Shark's face went pale. No, Maya. Carlos Rodriguez died in 2003, 12 years after Desert Storm. He'd been flying with injuries that never healed right, injuries from saving another pilot's life in Iraq. The Air Force kept it quiet, listed it as a training accident. The room spun. Everything Maya thought she knew about her father's death was a lie. Who did he save? She demanded. Shark met her eyes. A young F-16 pilot named Davidson. He's a colonel now. And Maya, he's deployed here, in Afghanistan, leading the 421st Fighter Squadron. The man her father had died saving was here. And Maya had a feeling she was going to meet him very soon. The intelligence briefing room was packed with pilots from 3 different squadrons, A-10s, Apache helicopters, and F-16 Fighting Falcons from the 421st Fighter Squadron. Maya slid into a seat near the back, still processing what Shark had told her the night before. Her father hadn't died in 1991. He died in 2003 from injuries sustained saving an F-16 pilot named Davidson. And that pilot was somewhere in this room. The lights dimmed, and a satellite image appeared on the screen. A compound in Kandahar province, nestled in a valley surrounded by steep ridgelines. Gentlemen and lady, the intelligence officer nodded at Maya, we have confirmation that Abu Nasir al-Takriti is holed up in this compound. High-value target, Al-Qaeda facilitator, responsible for at least 6 IED attacks that killed 18 coalition troops. We've been hunting this bastard for 9 months. Maya studied the image carefully. Something felt wrong. The compound sat in the middle of a natural choke point, mountains on 3 sides, only one approach vector. Any pilot with basic tactical training could see it was a terrible position to defend. Why would a high-value target choose such an obvious location? The strike package launches at 600 tomorrow, the briefer continued. F-16s will provide top cover and initial strike. A-10s will follow up with gun runs to eliminate any remaining targets. Apache will provide extraction security for our ground team moving in after the strike. As the briefing continued with weapons loadouts and communications frequencies, Maya noticed the F-16 pilots in the front row. There were 6 of them, all wearing the distinctive 421st patch, a black knight on a red shield. The one in the center, a gray-haired colonel with sharp features and intense eyes, kept turning around to look at her. Each time their eyes met, he quickly looked away. When the briefing ended, Maya moved toward the exit, but the colonel intercepted her path. Up close, she could see the lines etched deep around his eyes, the weathering of a career spent in cockpits. His name tape read, Davidson. Captain Rodriguez. His voice was rough, like gravel in a tumbler. I wanted to introduce myself. Colonel James Davidson, 421st Fighter Squadron Commander. Maya's heart hammered. This was him, the man her father had died saving. Sir, she managed, keeping her voice professional. Davidson's eyes searched her face and she saw something break in his expression, pain, guilt, recognition. You look just like him, he whispered. Same eyes, same determination in your jaw. You knew my father, it wasn't a question. I owed your father my life. Davidson's hand trembled slightly as he extended it. Major Carlos Rodriguez saved me over Iraq in 1991. I was a cocky lieutenant flying my first combat mission when I took a SAM hit. My aircraft was crippled and I was going down over Baghdad, a death sentence. Your father deliberately drew the enemy fire away from me, took hits meant for my aircraft. He got me home, but his injuries. Davidson's voice cracked. I visited him every week for 12 years while his body slowly gave out. I held his hand when he died. The room seemed to contract around Maya. All these years, she'd believed the sanitized story, hero pilot, clean death, flag-draped coffin. Nobody had told her about 12 years of suffering, of a man dying by inches from wounds that should have killed him immediately. Why didn't anyone tell me? Anger crept into her voice. Your mother wanted you to remember him healthy, strong, not the way he was at the end. Davidson's eyes glistened. I tried to reach out to you over the years, but she thought it was better to let you move forward. I respected her wishes, but damn, I've thought about Carlos every single day for 21 years. Colonel, we need to brief our flight. One of Davidson's pilots called from the doorway. Davidson nodded, then turned back to Maya. Tomorrow's mission, stick close to your wingman. That valley feels wrong to me. Trust your instincts. Your father's instincts kept him alive through 47 combat missions. They'll keep you alive too. He walked away before Maya could respond, leaving her standing alone in the empty briefing room. The pre-dawn darkness was absolute as Maya walked to her aircraft. Tail number 810967 sat on the flight line, armed with 6 Maverick missiles and a full load of 30 ammunition. The crew chief had painted a small bomb symbol below the cockpit, her first combat kill from the Sangin Valley mission. You good to fly? Shark asked, falling into step beside her. He'd sensed her tension during the night briefing. That valley is a kill box, Maya said flatly. High-value targets don't hide in obvious traps unless they're bait. I know, I already told Davidson the same thing. He agreed, but Intel is convinced and Command wants this guy badly enough to take the risk. Shark paused at his aircraft. We go in careful, and at the first sign of heavy resistance, we abort. Deal. Deal. At 5:57, 6 F-16s roared down the runway, followed 3 minutes later by Maya and Shark in their A-10s. The flight south took 40 minutes, the sun rising behind them and painting the Hindu Kush in shades of amber and gold. It should have been beautiful, but Maya couldn't shake the cold dread settling in her gut. Strike package, this is Hammer 1, Davidson's voice came over the radio. Target area in sight. Beginning our approach run. Warthogs hold station at Angels 15. Maya watched from altitude as the F-16s dove toward the valley, their sleek forms barely visible in the early morning light. For 30 seconds, everything was quiet. Then the sky exploded. Anti-aircraft fire erupted from dozens of hidden positions along the ridgelines, 23 cannons, shoulder-fired missiles, heavy machine guns. The Taliban had turned the entire valley into an interlocking death trap. This wasn't a compound housing a single high-value target. This was a carefully prepared ambush designed to kill American pilots. Break right, Davidson's voice screamed over the radio. It's a trap. All aircraft egress north. One of the F-16s took a direct hit, trailing smoke as it climbed desperately for altitude. Maya watched in horror as a surface-to-air missile corkscrewed up from the valley floor, tracking the damaged fighter. Hammer 3 is hit, the pilot transmitted. I'm losing hydraulics. Without thinking, Maya pushed her throttles forward and dove. Shark, cover me, I'm going in. Maya, negative, you'll get shredded. But Maya was already committed, diving through 12,000 feet, her targeting computer locking onto the SAM site that had fired at the F-16. Her training, her instincts, her father's ghost, everything screamed at her to protect that pilot. At 8,000 feet, she fired a Maverick missile. It streaked into the valley and detonated the SAM position in a fireball. That's when the second missile site opened fire. Maya saw the smoke trail rising toward her, saw the missile tracking with impossible speed. She threw her Warthog into a violent turn, dispensing flares, but she was too low, too slow, too committed to the dive. The missile detonated 20 feet from her left engine. The explosion was catastrophic. Shrapnel tore through her wing, severed hydraulic lines, shredded her left engine into scrap metal. Warning alarms screamed in her ears. Red lights flooded her cockpit. The aircraft shuddered like a dying animal and began to roll uncontrollably to the left. Maya's hit, Shark's voice was pure anguish. Eject, eject. But below her, Maya saw only Taliban-controlled territory, saw the fighters already moving toward her projected crash site. If she ejected, she'd be captured or killed within minutes. Her father's words echoed in her memory, words she didn't even know she'd heard. A Rodriguez never abandons their aircraft. Negative, Maya transmitted, fighting the stick with both hands, every muscle straining. I'm bringing her down. I'm bringing her home. The ground rushed up to meet her at terminal velocity. The A-10 Thunderbolt II was built to survive. Its designers had studied every aircraft loss in Vietnam and engineered redundancy into every system. Dual hydraulics, separated fuel tanks, a titanium bathtub around the cockpit that could withstand 23 cannon fire. But even the Warthog had limits, and Maya was about to find them. Her left engine was completely destroyed, turbine blades shredding themselves apart in a screaming mechanical death rattle. The explosion had severed her primary hydraulic system, and the backup was hemorrhaging fluid through a dozen puncture wounds in the wing. Her flight controls felt like stirring concrete, every input requiring both hands and all her strength. The aircraft rolled violently to the left, the damaged wing trying to drag her into a spin that would be unrecoverable. Maya's altitude was bleeding away at an alarming rate, 7,000 feet, 6,500. At this rate of descent, she had maybe 90 seconds before impact. Maya, eject now, Shark's voice was raw with desperation. You can't save it. Through her damaged canopy, Maya could see the valley floor rushing up, and she could see the Taliban fighters scrambling toward vehicles, already moving to intercept her projected crash site. A parachute landing would put her down right in their midst. They'd capture her, torture her, parade her in front of cameras before they killed her. The thought ignited something primal in her chest. I can save it, she growled through gritted teeth. I will save it. Colonel Davidson's F-16 pulled alongside her dying Warthog, close enough that she could see his face through the canopy, his eyes wide with horror and recognition. This was his nightmare repeating itself. Another Rodriguez dying because of him. Captain Rodriguez, listen to me. Davidson's voice was forcibly calm, the voice of a commander who'd talked dozens of pilots through emergencies. You have a dry riverbed at your 2 o'clock, 4 miles out. It's your only shot. Can you make it? Maya's eyes snapped to the location. Through the smoke and chaos, she could just make out a pale scar cutting through the brown landscape, a seasonal riverbed, bone dry in the Afghan summer. Maybe 500 meters long, relatively flat, littered with rocks. It was a terrible landing site. It was also her only chance. I see it, Maya transmitted. Hawk 2-1 is attempting emergency landing. Her altimeter continued its relentless countdown, 4,000 feet, 3,500. She had to line up her approach perfectly on the first try. There would be no second chance, no go-around, no margin for error. The physics were brutal. She was descending too fast in an aircraft that barely responded to her inputs. Maya's training took over, mechanical and precise. She shut down the destroyed left engine to prevent fire, transferred all remaining fuel to the right-side tanks, lowered her landing gear, and felt a surge of relief when all 3 wheels locked down. At least she wouldn't belly land. 2,500 feet. The riverbed was directly ahead now, but her approach angle was too steep, her airspeed too high. She needed to bleed off speed without losing what little control she had left. Maya deployed her speed brakes and felt the Warthog shudder violently. Warning lights blazed across her instrument panel like Christmas decorations. Her hydraulic pressure gauge read 0. She was flying a 23-ton brick with wings. "You're too fast, Maya," Davidson called. 50 knots too fast. You need to slow down or you'll cartwheel." "Working on it," Maya snapped, fighting the stick as the aircraft tried to roll inverted. Her right arm was screaming from the effort, muscles burning with lactic acid. Sweat poured down her face, stinging her eyes. 1,500 feet. In her peripheral vision, Maya saw Shark's A-10 making a gun run on Taliban positions near the riverbed, his cannon fire kicking up geysers of dirt and rock. He was clearing her landing zone, buying her precious seconds. The other F-16s orbited overhead, their pilots watching in helpless horror as she fell from the sky. 1,000 feet. Maya could see individual rocks in the riverbed now, could see the slight slope that ran downhill to the south. If she could touch down at the high end and use that slope to help slow down, she might survive this. But her approach was taking her too far south. She needed to stretch her glide. She pulled back on the stick with everything she had, trading airspeed for distance. The Warthog's nose came up, the stall warning horn blaring in her ears. Too slow and she'd drop like a stone. Too fast and she'd overshoot and crash into the rocks beyond the riverbed. 500 feet. "Altitude, altitude," Davidson warned. "You're sinking." Maya pushed the nose down slightly, felt the aircraft accelerate again. The ground was a blur now, rushing up with terrifying speed. She could see the texture of the rocks, see a cluster of scrub bushes that marked the beginning of the riverbed. 200 feet. This was it. No more time for adjustments, no more second chances. Maya pulled her throttle back to idle on her one remaining engine and braced herself. "Come on, baby," she whispered to her father's aircraft. "Fly me home one more time." 100 feet, 50 feet, 30 feet. The A-10's landing gear touched the riverbed at 165 knots, nearly twice the normal landing speed. The impact was savage. Maya's helmet slammed forward into the canopy rail despite her harness. The right main gear compressed fully, then partially collapsed. The aircraft bounced 15 feet back into the air, completely out of control. Maya didn't scream. She was beyond screaming. She simply held on as physics took over. The Warthog came down again, harder this time. The left main gear sheared completely off. The aircraft slewed violently to the left, the damaged wing dragging in the dirt, carving a deep furrow. Rocks hammered against the fuselage like artillery shells. The nose gear folded backward. The aircraft was now sliding on its belly at over 120 knots, throwing up a rooster tail of dust and debris that blotted out the sun. Inside the cockpit, Maya was being thrown against her harness with bone-jarring force. Her teeth clacked together. Her vision grayed at the edges. The screech of tearing metal was deafening. She could smell aviation fuel, smoke, burning rubber. The Warthog hit a boulder the size of a Volkswagen and spun 180 degrees, now sliding backward. Maya lost all sense of direction. The world was just noise and violence and the certainty of death. Then, impossibly, the aircraft began to slow. 100 knots, 80-60-40. The A-10 ground to a halt in an explosion of dust, coming to rest canted at a 20-degree angle, tail down, nose pointed skyward. For 3 heartbeats, there was absolute silence. Then Maya heard it, the crackle of small arms fire. The Taliban were already shooting at her. Her hands moved on pure instinct. She popped the canopy release, grabbed her rifle from its mount, and kicked free of the harness. Her legs nearly gave out when she dropped to the ground, her left ankle screaming in pain, probably sprained or broken in the crash. Rounds pinged off the Warthog's armor as Maya scrambled for cover behind the damaged fuselage. She could see vehicles in the distance, 3 miles out and closing fast, maybe 15 minutes before they reached her position. Overhead, the F-16s were already diving, their cannons firing, trying to slow the Taliban advance. But they couldn't stay forever. They'd run out of fuel, run out of ammunition, and she'd be alone. Maya pulled out her survival radio with shaking hands and transmitted. Hawk 2-1 is down, alive and armed. I need immediate extraction. Colonel Davidson's voice came back instantly, rough with emotion. Copy 2-1, we've got eyes on you. Rescue is inbound, ETA 45 minutes. We will not leave you. 45 minutes, a lifetime in combat. Maya checked her rifle, 30 rounds. Then she looked back at her aircraft, at tail number 810967 still visible through the dust and smoke. Her father had flown this bird through hell and brought it home. She'd just done the same. Now she had to survive long enough to tell someone about it. The first Taliban technical truck appeared over a ridgeline 2 miles away. Maya chambered around and prepared to fight. Colonel James Davidson pulled his F-16 into a tight orbit 3,000 feet above the crash site, his eyes locked on the wounded A-10 sprawled in the riverbed like a dying animal. Black smoke poured from its shredded left engine. The canopy was open. He could see the pilot, Captain Rodriguez, scrambling for cover behind the fuselage, rifle in hand. She was alive for now. Hammer 1, this is Badger TOC, the Tactical Operations Center called. What's the situation on the downed pilot? Pilot is alive and mobile, Davidson transmitted, keeping his voice professional despite the adrenaline flooding his system. She's armed and taking cover. Enemy forces converging from multiple directions. I count at least 4 vehicles, approximately 20 to 30 personnel. Copy, rescue flight is wheels up, ETA 43 minutes. 43 minutes, Davidson's stomach clenched. The Taliban would reach her position in less than 15. He rolled his F-16 into a shallow dive, dropping to 1,500 feet to get a better visual on Maya's position. She was pinned down behind the wrecked A-10, occasionally popping up to fire controlled bursts at the approaching vehicles. Smart, she was conserving ammunition, making every shot count. Her father had been the same way, disciplined under fire. The thought of Carlos made Davidson's chest tighten with old grief. As he banked around the crash site, sunlight glinted off the A-10's tail. For the first time since the chaos had erupted, Davidson saw the tail number clearly. 810967. His breath caught in his throat. His hands went numb on the stick. No, it couldn't be. Davidson blinked hard, certain his eyes were deceiving him. But the numbers remained, stark and undeniable against the battle-scarred metal, 810967. That tail number belonged to Major Carlos Rodriguez. The aircraft Carlos had been flying on February 27, 1991, when he'd deliberately drawn enemy fire away from Davidson's crippled F-16 over Baghdad. The bird Carlos had nursed back to base with catastrophic damage that had included shrapnel in the cockpit that tore through his legs and abdomen. Davidson had visited Carlos in the hospital that same night, had seen the extent of the wounds. The doctors had been blunt. He'll live, but he'll never fly again. The nerve damage is too severe. But Carlos had refused to accept it. Through 12 years of surgeries and physical therapy, through constant pain that would have broken lesser men, Carlos had fought his way back into a cockpit. Davidson had been there for every milestone. The first time Carlos walked without crutches, the first time he passed a flight physical, the first time he flew again. And Davidson had been there in 2003, when Carlos's body finally gave out during a routine training flight, when the old wounds and accumulated damage simply stopped his heart at 15,000 feet. He'd been the one to identify the body, to contact Carlos's widow, to stand at attention as they folded the flag. The Air Force had quietly retired tail number 810967 after that, a gesture of respect for a pilot who'd given everything. Now, 21 years later, That same aircraft was lying broken in an Afghan riverbed, and Carlos's daughter was fighting for her life beside it. "Oh God, Carlos," Davidson whispered into his oxygen mask. "Your little girl, your baby girl." The full weight of the moment crashed over him. He'd met Maya at Carlos's funeral, an 8-year-old in a black dress, clutching her mother's hand, not crying because she'd been too young to fully understand that Daddy was never coming home. She'd looked up at Davidson with those same dark eyes her father had, and he'd promised her, "Your daddy was the bravest man I ever knew." Now that little girl was a combat pilot, flying her father's aircraft, facing the same kind of enemies that had ultimately killed Carlos. And Davidson was going to save her, or die trying. "Hammer Flight, this is Hammer 1, Davidson transmitted, his voice cutting through the radio chatter with absolute authority. "Listen carefully. That tail number, 81-0967, belonged to Major Carlos Rodriguez. The pilot down there is his daughter." Shocked silence filled the radio frequency. Davidson continued, each word heavy with meaning. "Carlos saved my life 21 years ago. He took hits meant for me and paid for it with his life. Today, we repay that debt. Every single one of us. I don't care if we have to burn through every round of ammunition. I don't care if we run on fumes. We will not let Maya Rodriguez die in that riverbed." "Hammer 2 copies." The first response came immediately. "I've got 30 minutes of fuel. I'll stay as long as I can." "Hammer 3. My dad flew with Major Rodriguez in Desert Storm. I'm not leaving." "Hammer 4. I'll call for tanker support. We can keep a rotating CAP overhead." "Hammer 5 and 6. We're with you, boss, until the wheels fall off." Davidson felt his throat constrict with emotion, but he forced it down. There would be time for feelings later. Right now, he had a pilot to protect. He switched to the survival radio frequency. "Captain Rodriguez, this is Hammer 1. Do you copy?" Maya's voice came back, steady despite the gunfire crackling in the background. "I copy, Hammer 1. I've got 3 vehicles closing from the north, maybe 10 minutes out. I'm down to 22 rounds." "Help is coming," Davidson said, and he was no longer speaking as a colonel to a captain, but as a man honoring a promise to a dead friend. "I swear to you, Maya, we will not let them take you. Your father saved my life, and I'm going to save yours." A pause. When Maya spoke again, her voice was softer. "Sir, you're the pilot my father saved." "I am, and I've spent 21 years wishing I could repay him. Today I get that chance." Davidson didn't wait for her response. He rolled his F-16 into a steep dive, lining up on the lead Taliban vehicle. His targeting computer locked on, and he fired a burst from his M61 Vulcan cannon. The 20 rounds tore through the truck's engine block, and it exploded in a ball of orange flame. The second vehicle tried to scatter, but Hammer 2 was already diving, his cannon roaring. Another explosion. But more vehicles were appearing on the horizon. The Taliban knew they'd downed an American pilot, and they were throwing everything they had at capturing her. This wasn't just an opportunity. It was a prize worth dying for. "Badger TOC, Hammer 1, Davidson called. "We need that rescue flight expedited. The enemy is massing. If we don't get her out soon, we're going to lose her." "Working it, Hammer. Fastest we can get the Hellos there is 38 minutes. 38 minutes, an eternity." Davidson keyed the survival radio again. "Maya, I need you to conserve ammunition. Only shoot if they get within 200 meters. We'll handle everything beyond that. Do you understand?" "Understood, sir." "And Hammer 1, Maya's voice cracked slightly. "Thank you for everything you did for my father." Davidson had to swallow hard before he could respond. "Your father was the best man I ever knew. He'd be so damn proud of you right now." As he pulled up from another strafing run, Davidson looked down at the crash site. He could see Maya's small figure behind the wrecked Warthog, see her taking careful aim at an approaching fighter. She fired once. The Taliban soldier dropped. 11 rounds left. Carlos's daughter had inherited more than just her father's aircraft. She had his courage, his skill, his refusal to quit. Davidson checked his fuel gauge. 22 minutes of combat time remaining before he'd have to leave for the tanker. But reinforcements were already scrambling from 3 different bases, A-10s, Apache, even a B-1 bomber being diverted from another mission. The word had spread through the entire theater. Carlos Rodriguez's daughter was down, and every pilot who'd ever heard the legend was racing to save her. But first, they had to keep her alive for 38 more minutes. Davidson armed another missile and dove back into the fight, Carlos's memory flying beside him like a ghost. The sun was a burning disk in the Afghan sky, turning the riverbed into an oven. Maya crouched behind her wrecked A-10, her flight suit soaked with sweat, her injured ankle throbbing with every heartbeat. She'd been on the ground for 18 minutes, and it felt like 18 hours. The Taliban were getting bolder. They'd learned quickly that the F-16's overhead couldn't hit targets too close to the downed aircraft without risking Maya's position. So they were creeping forward, using the terrain, moving from rock to rock like wolves stalking wounded prey. Maya could see them, shadowy figures darting between boulders, the sun glinting off their weapons. She'd fired 11 more rounds in the last 10 minutes. 11 shots, 8 hits, 3 misses. The math was brutal. 11 rounds left in her rifle and at least 15 enemy fighters still advancing. Hammer 1, how long on that rescue? Maya transmitted, trying to keep the desperation out of her voice. 31 minutes, Davidson replied immediately. His F-16 screamed overhead, so low that Maya could feel the jet wash. I know it feels like forever, but help is coming. Half the Air Force is scrambling to get to you. Half the Air Force. Maya shook her head. Why would they send so many assets for one down pilot? Standard protocol was a rescue helicopter with Apache escort, but according to the radio chatter she'd been monitoring, there were at least a dozen aircraft either overhead or inbound. F-16s, F-15s, A-10s, even an AC-130 gunship diverting from another mission. She didn't understand it. What she did understand was the Taliban fighter popping up from behind a boulder 200 meters away, RPG launcher on his shoulder. Maya's rifle snapped up. She fired twice. The first round missed. The second caught him in the chest and he tumbled backward, the RPG falling from his hands. 10 rounds left. Good shot, Davidson called. But Maya, you need to move position. They're flanking you from the west. Can you move? Maya tested her ankle and nearly screamed. Definitely broken. Negative, ankle's busted, I'm stationary. A new voice cut into the radio frequency. Hammer flight, this is Hawkeye 2-2. I'm 3 minutes out with a full combat load. Where do you need me? Shark, Maya gasped. Her wingman should have been RTB, returning to base for fuel 20 minutes ago. Did you think I was gonna leave you, Maya? Shark's voice was thick with emotion. Not a chance in hell. I've been flying on fumes for the last 15 minutes waiting for a tanker. Hawkeye 2-2, this is Hammer 1, Davidson transmitted. Take station at Angels 8 and work the western approach. We've got 15 to 20 personnel trying to flank the crash site. Copy, and Hammer 1. I just heard about the tail number, about who Maya's father was. A pause. It's an honor to fight beside Carlos Rodriguez's daughter. There it was again, that strange reverence in their voices when they mentioned her father. Maya had known Carlos Rodriguez was respected, but this felt like something more, something deeper. She didn't have time to process it. 3 Taliban fighters broke cover simultaneously, sprinting toward her position from different angles. Maya swung her rifle left, fired twice, 1 down. Swung right, fired once, another down. The third was still coming, AK-47 raised. Then Shark's A-10 appeared like an avenging angel, cannon roaring. The 30 rounds walked across the riverbed in a line of explosions, and the third fighter simply ceased to exist. Thanks, Shark, Maya breathed. Anytime, kid. Another voice joined the frequency. Hammer 1, this is Reaper 1-1. AC-130 on station with full combat load. We have infrared eyes on 30-plus enemy personnel converging on the crash site. Request permission to engage. Granted, Davidson said. Danger close. The pilot is at the northern end of the wreckage. Copy, danger close. Beginning gun run. The AC-130 Spectre gunship was a beast from another era, a flying artillery platform carrying a 105 howitzer, 40 cannon, and 25 Gatling gun. When it opened fire, the effect was apocalyptic. The ground around Maya erupted in geysers of dirt and rock. She pressed herself flat against the A-10's fuselage as the AC-130's guns methodically worked over every Taliban position within 500 meters. The noise was beyond description, a continuous thunder that made her bones vibrate. When the firing stopped, the silence was deafening. Reaper shows 15 enemy KIA, remainder retreating, the AC-130 crew reported. But we've got more vehicles inbound from the south. Looks like they're bringing reinforcements. Davidson's voice was grim. How many? 6 vehicles, maybe 40 to 50 personnel, ETA 12 minutes. 12 minutes. The rescue helicopter was still 24 minutes out. Maya checked her rifle. 8 rounds left. She was down to her pistol after that. 15 rounds of 9, 23 rounds total against 50 fighters. The math didn't work. All stations, this is Badger TOC. A new voice crackled over the radio. Be advised, we're scrambling every available asset in theater. You've got 2 more A-10 flights inbound, 4 F-15s, and 2 Apache gunships. Command wants continuous air cover over that crash site until the pilot is recovered. Maya's head spun. This was insane. They were throwing millions of dollars of aircraft and ordnance at her rescue. Why? Hammer 1, she transmitted. Sir, I don't understand. Why are they sending so many assets? The radio was silent for a long moment. Then Davidson's voice came back, soft and heavy with emotion. Maya, your father didn't just save my life. He saved dozens of lives throughout his career. He was a legend in the fighter community, the kind of pilot who'd fly through hell itself to protect his wingman. When word spread that you were down, that you were flying Carlos Rodriguez's aircraft, that you were his daughter, Davidson's voice cracked. Every pilot who knew your father, every pilot who'd heard the stories, every pilot who believed in the code, that we never leave our own behind, they all volunteered. Some of these guys flew with your father. Some never met him but grew up hearing about him. But all of us owe him, and today we pay that debt. Tears stung Maya's eyes. For 21 years she'd felt alone, carrying her father's legacy like a crushing weight. But she hadn't been alone. This whole time an entire brotherhood had been watching, remembering, honoring the man who'd given everything. Hammer Flight, this is Python 1-1 and 1-2, 2 new voices called. We're the A-10s from Bagram. We just heard about Carlos's daughter. We're carrying full loads and we're not leaving until she's home. Python Flight, this is Hammer 1. Welcome to the party. Take station south and engage those vehicles. The radio frequency became a symphony of call signs as more aircraft arrived. Warthogs, Vipers, Eagles, Apache. The sky above Maya's position filled with American warplanes, a steel umbrella that nothing could penetrate. And still the Taliban came. The 6 vehicles appeared over a ridgeline 3 miles out, racing toward the crash site. They knew time was against them. They knew the rescue was coming. This was their last chance. All stations weapons free, Davidson commanded. Hammer Flight will take the lead vehicles. Python, you've got the trailers. Reaper, work the dismounts. Let's end this. What followed was a masterclass in coordinated air power. F-16s dove from altitude, missiles streaking from their wings. A-10s made gun runs, their cannons singing. The AC-130 rained precision fire from above. Apache helicopters popped up from behind ridgelines, their Hellfire missiles finding targets with surgical accuracy. Maya watched in awe as the Taliban convoy was systematically destroyed. Vehicles exploded. Fighters scattered and died. Within 90 seconds, the southern approach was a smoking graveyard. Badger TOC, all southern threats neutralized, Davidson reported. But we're getting low on fuel and ammunition. How long on that rescue? Rescue flight is 10 minutes out. Can you hold? We'll hold, Davidson said flatly. We'll hold until the last drop of fuel and the last round of ammunition. That's a promise. As the sun began its descent toward the western mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and red, Maya sat with her back against tail number 810967 and understood something profound. Her father had never really left. He lived on in every pilot circling overhead, in every round fired to protect her, in every oath to never leave a comrade behind. The brotherhood her father had died protecting was now protecting his daughter. And they would not fail. The rescue helicopter appeared as a dark speck against the setting sun, its rotors beating the air into submission. Maya heard it before she saw it, the distinctive whop-whop-whop of a Black Hawk cutting through the distant rumble of jet engines overhead. Rescue 11 is 5 minutes out, the pilot transmitted. Prepare for hot extraction. Hot extraction. Military speak for landing under enemy fire and getting out as fast as possible. Maya gripped her rifle tighter, her 8 remaining rounds suddenly feeling like a joke. Her ankle was swollen to twice its normal size, the pain a constant throb that made her nauseous. Hammer 1, this is Rescue 11, the helicopter pilot called. I need that LZ clear. What's the threat status? Davidson's response was immediate. You've got scattered enemy personnel in the hills, approximately 200 to 300 meters from the crash site. They're staying low because of our air cover, but the moment you come in, they'll open up on you. Understood, we're coming in hot either way. Then, as if the Taliban had heard the radio transmission, the riverbed erupted with gunfire. They'd been waiting, hiding in crevices and behind rocks that the thermal imaging had missed. Now they revealed themselves, dozens of fighters pouring fire toward Maya's position and the approaching helicopter. Tracer rounds drew bright lines through the darkening sky. Maya returned fire, her shots disciplined and precise. 1 round, 1 target down, 7 rounds left. Another shot, another fighter dropping, 6 rounds left. Contact, heavy contact, the rescue pilot shouted as bullets pinged off his armored helicopter. We're taking fire from multiple positions. The sky above Maya transformed into hell. Every aircraft in the stack dove simultaneously. F-16 screamed down in near-vertical dives, their cannons roaring. Shark's A-10 made a gun run so low that Maya could see the brass casings ejecting from his cannon, glittering like gold coins as they fell. The AC-130 orbiting at altitude unleashed its 105 howitzer, each shot sounding like the wrath of God. The Taliban positions disappeared in explosions of rock and fire, but still they kept shooting. These weren't regular fighters, they were hardcore jihadists, willing to die for the chance to capture an American pilot. They knew reinforcements wouldn't reach them in time, knew the air power would eventually kill them all. But if they could just kill or capture the pilot first, it would be worth it. A round sparked off the A-10's fuselage 6 inches from Maya's head. Another hit the ground between her feet, spraying her with dirt. She was out of time. Rescue 11, you need to come now, Maya shouted into her radio. I can't hold them much longer. 30 seconds, the pilot replied. Maya saw him then, a Taliban fighter sprinting toward her from behind a boulder, screaming Allahu Akbar, suicide vest clearly visible under his tunic. He was 50 meters away. 40, 30. Maya fired, click. Her rifle was empty. She dropped it and drew her pistol, the motion smooth despite her shaking hands. The fighter was 20 meters away when she fired 3 rapid shots. All 3 hit center mass, but he was already committed, already falling forward with his finger on the detonator. "Get down," someone screamed over the radio. Maya threw herself flat behind the A-10's landing gear strut as the suicide bomber detonated 15 meters away. The explosion was massive, the shockwave slamming into the aircraft like a giant's fist. Shrapnel whined overhead. Maya's ears rang with a high-pitched whine that drowned out everything else. When she looked up, the Black Hawk was touching down in a maelstrom of dust and rotor wash, its door gunners laying down suppressive fire with their miniguns. The noise was apocalyptic, the howl of turbines, the scream of jets overhead, the thunder of explosions, all blending into one continuous roar. "Move, move, move." A pararescueman jumped from the helicopter and sprinted toward Maya's position, bullets kicking up dirt around his feet. He was wearing full combat gear, carrying a rifle that he fired from the hip as he ran. Maya tried to stand, but her broken ankle gave out. She collapsed, crying out in pain and frustration. The PJ reached her in seconds, his strong hands grabbing her under the arms. "I got you. You're going home." He half-carried, half-dragged Maya toward the helicopter as rounds snapped past them. 20 meters, 15, 10. Another explosion rocked the ground and the PJ threw his body over Maya's, shielding her with his armor. Then hands were pulling them both into the helicopter, the door gunners never stopping their fire. Maya was thrown onto the metal floor of the Black Hawk, her body screaming in pain. The PJ landed beside her, immediately checking her for wounds. "I'm okay," Maya gasped, "just the ankle." "Clear, Geo, someone shouted. The helicopter lifted off in a violent climb, twisting sideways as the pilots threw it into evasive maneuvers. Through the open door, Maya could see her A-10 tail number 810967, sitting broken and burning in the riverbed. Smoke poured from the engines. The canopy was shattered. The landing gear was collapsed. Her father's aircraft was dying. "Wait," Maya screamed, reaching toward the door. "We can't leave it." The crew chief grabbed her, holding her back. "It's gone, ma'am. We have to go." "No," tears streamed down Maya's face. "That's my father's plane. I have to." An explosion cut her off. A Taliban RPG had finally found its mark, detonating against the A-10's fuselage. The fuel tanks erupted in a ball of orange flame that reached 50 feet into the air. Maya watched in horror as tail number 810967 was consumed by fire. She'd failed to bring her father's aircraft home, failed to. "You brought yourself home," a voice said over the helicopter's intercom. "That's all that matters." Maya turned to see Colonel Davidson strapped into a seat across from her. He must have landed his F-16 at a nearby base and caught a ride on a support helicopter. His flight suit was dark with sweat, his face lined with exhaustion, but his eyes were bright with relief. "Your father's aircraft was just metal and composite," Davidson continued, leaning forward so she could hear him over the rotor noise. You're his real legacy, and you're alive." The Black Hawk banked hard, the door gunners still firing at muzzle flashes below. But they were gaining altitude fast, the mountain ridges falling away beneath them. F-16s formed up on either side, escorting them home. Maya looked back one last time. The burning wreckage of tail number 810967 was a bright point of fire in the gathering darkness, a funeral pyre visible for miles. "I'm sorry, Dad," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." The crew chief pressed a bottle of water into her hands. The PJ was cutting away her boot to examine her ankle. The helicopter's medic was checking her vital signs. Everyone was moving with practiced efficiency, taking care of her, protecting her. Just like her father's brotherhood had promised. As Bagram Airfield appeared on the horizon, its runway lights bright against the Afghan night, Maya allowed herself to believe something she hadn't believed in 21 years. She wasn't alone. She had never been alone. Her father's family was her family, and they had just brought her home. The Black Hawk touched down on the flight line 38 minutes after Maya had crashed. Dozens of pilots and crew chiefs stood at attention along the taxiway, saluting as she was carried past on a stretcher. She was home. But the real homecoming was still to come. Maya woke in the base hospital with her ankle in a cast and her body feeling like it had been thrown down a mountain. Sunlight streamed through the window, telling her it was morning. She'd been unconscious for nearly 12 hours. A nurse noticed her stirring and immediately called for the doctor. But it wasn't a doctor who appeared in her doorway. Colonel James Davidson stood there, looking older and more tired than when she'd last seen him. He held a worn manila folder in his hands, the kind that held classified documents or personnel files. His eyes were red-rimmed, like he hadn't slept. "Permission to enter, Captain." His voice was formal, but Maya could hear the emotion beneath it. "Of course, sir." Maya struggled to sit up, wincing as her body protested. Davidson pulled a chair beside her bed and sat down heavily. For a long moment, he just looked at her, his eyes searching her face like he was seeing a ghost. "You look so much like him," he finally said. "Same determination, same fire. Yesterday, when you refused to eject when you fought to save that aircraft, that was pure Carlos." "Sir, I need to know the truth." Maya's voice was steady despite the emotions churning inside her. "My mother told me my father died in 1991, but Shark said it was 2003. And that tail number, why was it retired? What really happened to my father?" Davidson opened the folder, his hands trembling slightly. "Your mother was trying to protect you. In a way, your father did die in 1991, just not the way you think." He pulled out a photograph and handed it to Maya. It showed a younger Davidson standing beside an F-16, his arm around a stocky Hispanic pilot with a brilliant smile. Her father. Maya's breath caught. She'd seen so few pictures of him. "February 27, 1991, Davidson began. "We were on a strike mission over Baghdad. I was a cocky 23-year-old lieutenant on my first combat deployment. Your father was my flight lead, already a legend at 31 with a reputation for bringing everyone home alive." He paused, lost in memory. "We got jumped by Iraqi air defenses. A surface-to-air missile hit my aircraft, shredded my hydraulics, set my engine on fire. I was going down over the most hostile territory in Iraq." Maya clutched the photograph, her eyes fixed on Davidson's face. "Your father had a choice," Davidson continued. "Follow the rules of engagement and return to base, or risk everything to save one pilot. Without hesitation, he broke formation and dove after me. He put his aircraft between mine and the Iraqi guns, deliberately drawing their fire. He took hits meant for me, 23 mm cannon fire that tore through his cockpit. Shrapnel severed nerves in both legs, damaged his spine, tore through his abdomen." Tears were streaming down Davidson's face now. "But he stayed with me, talked me through the emergency procedures, escorted me across the border into Saudi airspace. By the time we landed, his cockpit was full of blood. The doctors said he'd never walk again, never fly again. But Carlos Rodriguez didn't know how to quit." "He flew again," Maya whispered. "He fought for 12 years to get back in a cockpit, dozens of surgeries, physical therapy that would have broken anyone else. He learned to walk again through sheer willpower, passed flight physical after flight physical by hiding the pain, compensating for the nerve damage. By 2003, he was flying training missions again, mentoring young pilots." Davidson's voice cracked. "I visited him every chance I got, watched him suffer in silence because all he wanted was to fly." Davidson pulled out another document, a medical report. "April 15, 2003. Routine training flight over Nevada. The cumulative damage to his cardiovascular system from the 1991 wounds, the stress of fighting through chronic pain, the toll of 12 years of surgeries. His heart gave out at 15,000 feet. He was 43 years old." Maya's tears fell on the photograph, blurring her father's smile. The Air Force ruled it a training accident to protect your mother's benefits, Davidson said. But everyone who knew Carlos understood the truth. He died from wounds sustained saving my life. I was at his bedside when he passed. His last words were about you. He said, "Tell Maya to fly fierce. Tell her the Rodriguez name means something. Tell her I love her." Maya couldn't speak. 21 years of questions, of half-truths, of wondering why her father had been taken from her, and now she finally knew. He'd died a hero twice over. That tail number, 81-0967, was the aircraft he flew that day in 1991, Davidson continued. After he died, I personally requested it be retired and preserved. I never wanted anyone else to fly it. He pulled out one final document from the folder. Then, 6 months ago, I learned that Captain Maya Rodriguez had been assigned to the 74th Fighter Squadron for deployment, Carlos's daughter following in his footsteps. You had the aircraft restored for me, Maya realized. An entire team of maintainers volunteered to bring her back to life, Davidson said. Pilots who'd flown with your father donated money to fund the restoration. We had one condition, that you never be told that you earn your way on merit alone, but we wanted you to have it, to complete the circle. He stood and walked to the window, his back to her. Yesterday, when I saw that tail number in the dirt, when I realized you were fighting for your life beside your father's aircraft, it was like Carlos was giving me a second chance. A chance to save his daughter the way he saved me. You did save me, Maya said softly. You all did. No, Davidson turned back to her, his eyes blazing with intensity. You saved yourself. That landing was the finest flying I've seen in 30 years. You fought off an enemy force that should have killed you. You survived because you're Carlos Rodriguez's daughter, and you're every bit the pilot he was. A knock on the door interrupted them. The base commander entered, followed by a maintenance chief carrying something wrapped in cloth. "Captain Rodriguez," the commander said formally, "we have something for you." The maintenance chief unwrapped the cloth, revealing a piece of metal about 2 feet square. It was scorched and blackened, but Maya could still read the numbers, 810967. "We recovered this from the crash site," the chief explained. "The aircraft is a total loss, but we saved the tail number panel, and ma'am, we have a proposal." He pulled out a tablet showing a rendering of a new A-10 Thunderbolt II. On its tail was the number 810967, freshly painted and pristine. "The Air Force is assigning you a replacement aircraft," the commander said. "We'd like permission to transfer this tail number to your new bird, to keep the legacy alive." Maya looked at the scorched metal, at the rendering of the new aircraft, at Davidson's hopeful face. Her father had flown this tail number into legend. She'd brought it through fire and survived. "Yes," she said, "but on one condition. I want my father's name on it, and I want a second name added, Colonel James Davidson, the man my father died saving and the man who saved me." Davidson's composure finally broke. He covered his face with his hands, his shoulders shaking. 3 weeks later, Maya stood on the Bagram flight line, her ankle still in a walking cast. Before her sat a pristine A-10 Warthog, fresh from depot maintenance. On its tail, 810967. Below the cockpit, painted in crisp letters, MAJ, CRLOS Havoc RODRIGUZ. Call James Hammer DAVIDSON. CAPT, Maya RODRIGUZ. And beneath her name, a small star, marking her successful combat rescue mission. The maintainer had added something else too, a simple phrase in Spanish that her father had carved into his cockpit frame 21 years ago. Para Maya vuela feroz. For Maya fly fierce. Davidson stood beside her, wearing his dress uniform, a folder in his hands. "I have something else for you," he said. "Letters your father wrote to you over those 12 years, one for every birthday he missed while he was recovering. He gave them to me before he died, asked me to deliver them when the time was right." He handed her the folder. Maya opened it with trembling hands and saw 12 sealed envelopes, each labeled with a year. Maya, age 9 through Maya, age 20. "He never stopped being your father," Davidson said. "Even when he couldn't be there, he was thinking of you, writing to you, loving you." Maya clutched the letters to her chest and looked up at tail number 810967. The morning sun glinted off the metal, and for just a moment she could have sworn she saw her father's reflection in the canopy, smiling, proud, finally at peace. She finally understood. She'd never been carrying her father's legacy alone. An entire community of warriors had been carrying it with her all along, across 2 generations and 21 years. The legacy was complete, and now it was hers to continue. "Permission to resume flight operations, sir," Maya asked. Davidson saluted her, his eyes shining. "Permission granted, Captain. Your father would be so proud, I know I am." As Maya climbed the ladder into the cockpit of tail number 810967, reborn from the ashes, she whispered a promise to the ghost of the man she barely remembered, but had always loved. "I'll fly fierce, Dad, I promise, for both of us." The engine roared to life, and Maya Rodriguez took to the sky, carrying her father's name, his legacy, and his unbreakable spirit into the endless blue. The end.